And we're live. Let me adjust this a little bit. I don't really like the lighting. I'll leave it. Okay, so what to talk about today? So let's do some level setting. So right now, in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, they are holding the 28th iteration of the COP, sometimes called the COP. The Conference of Parties. It's not very descriptive because it really wasn't meant to be an ongoing thing. The Conference of the Parties was something held 28 years ago for the first time because they had a big climate conference of some kind or a big treaty signed or something, and they decided that they would collect some nations together and like discuss it further, right? So they had what they call the Conference of the Parties. And it was the parties who were involved in this other thing, and they kind of got off on a sidebar, if you would, an extra thing, and they called it the COP. That was probably just in the email. We're gonna have a conference of parties. You all know what we're talking about. Let's just meet over here at this hotel and we'll just hash this out. Well, they decided that they probably need to do that annually. So the COP became an annual event. The title is not very descriptive. Conference about what and who are the parties and whatnot. But what it is, it's now up to 200 nations and territories and protectorates who come to this week-long event. It's held in different countries, different hosts, if you will. It's a bit like the Olympics, I guess. You can even think of it as the Olympics of the climate movement, right? Just think of it that way. It's not really competitive, but it kind of is, because this matter has become increasingly complex and combative. I don't follow the COPs very, very much. I'm pretty much in the camp of the people who think that it's something of a joke. It's not a joke because it's a bad idea. It's a joke because no one who comes to these things takes it seriously. Even though it's climate and global heating and climate change and everything that's associated with that, they just don't take it seriously. They've even gotten to where they don't take the IPCC process seriously anymore. It's all been completely usurped by vested interests. And now the IPCC process, which happens every 7 or 8 years, and the COP conference, which happens every year, are just tools, really, for the energy industries and all of their allies who just don't want any discussion of these things. And if there is going to have to be a discussion, then we want to control the narrative, and that's their point. In fact, to that point, the COP this year is attended by 200 countries or so. And they don't just send one person. It's not like the UN, right, where you just send your representative. There's an entourage, and so several countries will send a few delegates, and other countries will send 100 delegates or whatever. And it depends on what they can afford and what they're interested in the topic. Meanwhile, 70,000 lobbyists are thought to be attending COP28. 70,000 lobbyists. Yeah, it's hard to take this serious because you understand who these people are, right? It's the energy companies, and it's the International Chamber of Commerce, and it's every large Fortune 2000 company has sent a whole fleet of delegates. Well, they're not delegates; they're lobbyists. They're not on the floor of the conference. They're out in the wings. But you know what they're doing, right? They're handing out money. They're handing out free tickets to concerts, and they're getting people to talk to them, and they're not trying to. They're not trying to influence the discussion in a way that would be helpful to the global population or to global commerce or really anything. They're trying to influence the process in a way that is beneficial to the entities they represent. So Apple, Facebook, ExxonMobil, Total Energy in France, so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a joke. I don't follow them very closely. Generally, I'm interested when it's done. Did they accomplish anything? Did they come to any conclusions? Did Do they have any advice for the rest of us? Because that's what they're supposed to be doing. We have this IPCC process that analyzes the science every part of a decade, and then we do clearly need more frequent discussions than every 8 years about what we are doing to the climate of the only planet we can live on. Seems important to me. Sure, why not? Let's send 200 delegations to UAE to talk about the climate. One of the controversies this year is that it is being held in the United Arab Emirates, who are a nation entirely dependent on fossil fuel exports for their livelihood. The president of the current COP is a guy that is called Sultan Al Jaber, J-E-B-R. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. I'm an American. We don't know how to say anything that isn't in English. We don't do English very well. Sultan Al Jaber from the UAE is the president of the COP28 held in his country. A big fossil fuel exporting concern. So people were already pointing to the host country and how this was going to be a joke. And COP28 held in an oil exporting nation is pathetic and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the optics are not the best, but hey, there's 200 delegations that go into it. So are you going to start excluding delegations because they're all wrapped up in fossil fuels? Because you can be wrapped up in fossil fuels both as a producer country like Venezuela or the UAE or Saudi Arabia or Russia. You can be wrapped up in fossil fuels as an exporting nation, or you can be all wrapped up in fossil fuels and all hysterical about fossil fuels as a consumer country or a consumer company, right? Everyone has an interest in this. And as I've said recently, in basically all my videos I've done for the last year, you are all wrapped up in fossil fuels. So I guess you couldn't attend the COP28 because you have a vested interest. And the vested interest that everybody has in these things is that we need fossil fuels. We can't do any of this without fossil fuels. And I've said in my recent videos, the last one I did, in fact, everything you see, everything you know, everything you say, every thought you have is somehow wrapped up in fossil fuels, because your entire life, the scope of your life from the time you were born, from the moment you were conceived, is made possible by copious 24/7 application of fossil fuels. Your mother was dependent, your family was dependent, their families were dependent, your nation is dependent, your town where you live is dependent, your job you have now, the job your father had, the job your grandfather had, all these things are completely tied up 100%, 24/7 in fossil fuels. Completely. Absolutely. Guaranteed. Every thought you've ever had. I mean, seriously, it would be really hard for me to imagine a thought you could have that isn't somehow tied up in your access constantly to fossil fuels. Try it. Tell me how that works out for you. Do you have thoughts for the environment? Oh, the environment. The environment is so important. What do you know about the environment? You probably live in a city or a suburb, right? You go to a college, a university, work at a technology hub someplace, right? What do you know about the environment? Well, I keep hearing that there's problems with the environment, sixth mass extinction. Who do you hear that from? Well, it's in the media. The media? You mean the media that's dependent on fossil fuels? Well, yeah, but they report the truth. Really? Would they? Would they tell you exactly the scope of the problem? They said there's a problem. Yeah, but would they tell you the scope of the problem? Yeah, they have to admit there's a problem, but would they tell you the scope? Everything you know about the sixth mass extinction came to you via media, which are corporations, which have a vested interest in how you react to that information. And if you think they're not massaging it to make it less likely that you will have a profound, negative, terrified reaction to the onset of the sixth mass extinction of life on Earth, this planet, where your butt is right now, if you think they're not going to massage that somehow with their constant vision for their profits and their continued existence, consuming fossil fuels, run their enterprise and their empire, if you think they're not massaging everything and tell you about the sixth mass extinction, then you, my dear, are naive. And that's the best way I can put it. Naive. Everything you know about the sixth mass extinction, everything you know about global heating and climate change, even the fact that some people want to call it global warming and some people want to call it climate change, when in fact it's global heating. Everything you know about this, everything you've ever heard about the IPCC, everything you've ever heard about the COP28, every conversation you've ever had with anyone in your life about any of these topics was made possible by fossil fuels. Because you had that conversation at work, and you had that conversation at your university. You had that conversation when you were walking your dog and you met someone else and you talked about the weather. It turned eventually to climate change. And here you were standing on a sidewalk made with concrete, with rebar in it. And you drove there to the dog park in a car. And your dog is a hybrid that came to you from Denmark, and the leash is made out of plastic that you bought at the PetSmart, and everything about that entire interaction where you're standing on a sidewalk, walking your dog, talking casually to a neighbor in your community, and you think that you're doing something for yourself, and all of it was enabled by fossil fuels. Now, I have to say this because of what Sultan Al Jaber got in trouble for. Now, I have some notes here because I want to get this right. Words matter to me. Words matter. Now, I clipped this from CNN, not the most reliable source. Again, Chamber of Commerce. I've got 5 short paragraphs here. See how quickly I can get through this. I'm going to talk to this CNN article published today, actually. I should have that. So you can look this up. Okay. I should have. Okay. It's under on CNN. It was front page. Now it's on the World tab, which is fine. And it's called the topic level is COP and Beyond. All right. And the title under World is Climate Summit Leader Defends Controversial Comments That Alarmed Scientists and Sent Shockwaves Through Meeting. Now, it's generally the case. That was the title. It's generally the case that titles of articles are not written by the journalists who write the articles. The journalists write the articles, submit the articles, and say, this would be a good title. Then the editor or the editorial staff, writes the title that goes on top of the article. And this is a problem in journalism. It means that even if by the way, the article can be edited. Even if the journalist is trying to do their best job, their really good work, fair, even-handed, stating the facts, can be turned into either a puff piece or a hit piece by the editorial staff. And who are the editorial staff? Oh, that's right. They're basically the owners of the media. They are the corporation. The editorial staff does not represent the truth. The editorial staff represents the corporation. That's just a fact. And you could be a journalist and you can argue with that. Most journalists wouldn't. Most journalists say, yeah, he's right. He's right. And I've had articles myself that I've worked on for days and I put my best work into it. And I really, really thought I hit it. I thought I nailed it. And by the time it got into the actual journal, the newspaper, the online website, whatever, it was half the length. Most of the context was removed. Most of my best prose was stripped out, and they put a title on it that was got completely the opposite of what I wrote. And this is why journalists hate journalism. So I'm making this point because this title is at least half wrong. It's at least half wrong. I'll read it again. And I'll get to why it's half wrong. I'm trying to set context here. This is really hard. I am going up against global industrialized civilization. I am trying to right the wrongs of the entire industry of journalism. This is hard. You can't believe how hard this is. I'm on YouTube, which is all about journalism, and there's an editorial staff, and they're not going to like this. They're not going to like this. Here I am, tearing them down, and I'm tearing down CNN. I'll read this again. Climate Summit Leader defends controversial comments that alarmed scientists and sent shockwaves through the meeting. The leader in question is the president of COP28. being held in the UAE. His name is Sultan Al Jaber. There's more to it than that, but I'll roll with that. Uh, when the a little bit of context here. I am not immune to this. Okay, when the conference was first, okay, I have to include this. It paints me as a bad person, and that's okay. I'll be the bad person, but it's funny and it's necessary for me to state this because I have had a complete 180-degree turn on this guy. I am completely now 180 degrees away from where I was when I started. And here's where I started. Okay, so we all heard that COP28 was going to be held in the UAE. It's like, oh God, okay, fine, but that's no worse than holding it in the US. I mean, we're an oil producing country, right? We're dependent on oil, 100,000%. Okay, fine. So it's being held in the UAE. I'll jump over that. And the president of the COP28 summit is Sultan Al Jaber, blah 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 blah, and he's CEO of an oil company, and he's a CEO of a philanthropic company, and he's got his fingers in a lot of pies. And Sultan Al Jaber, and I said, okay, first of all, we have to make a distinction because the other Al is also going to be involved at some point, and that's Al Gore. He's going to have something to say about this. And so I said, we have to make a distinction between Sultan Al Jaber, and I'm going to call him Evil Al. There's Al Gore, and there's Evil Al. And it was kind of a joke. I mean, I don't know the guy. I can't say things like that about him, but it was kind of a joke. It's a joke. Evil Al Jaber. Okay. In the UAE, having a climate summit where they're going to discuss how to draw down our fossil fuel consumption. Oh, give me a break. They're not going to discuss anything of the kind. But let's let them do what they do. Okay, let's see what they're going to do. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But let's see what they do. Let's give them some time to figure it out. Give them some time to argue about it. And the 70,000 lobbyists will have something to say. And, 70,000 lobbyists and 200 delegations, who's going to win, right? So even if the delegations and the president, Al Jaber, if they do the right thing, if they 100% do the right thing, and every child gets a pony, the 70,000 lobbyists are probably going to have something to say about that, right? So whose fault is it if it turns into a joke? Might not be his fault. But here's the controversy. We're now deep into this COP28 summit, and they're dredging up something he said a while back, and I'm just going to, from this article, I'm just going to pull out the parts that CNN was willing to publish. So let's imagine these are the most scathing and disparaging mistakes he could make verbally, right? These are gaffes of a high order, that he is completely off the reservation with this. Okay, so I'm just going to go with what they printed. I don't know the guy. I didn't read his articles. I don't know his background. Let's just go with what CNN said. It's probably pretty hot, right? The Emirati, that's United Arab Emirates, the Emirati businessman is the UAE's climate envoy and chairs the board of directors of its renewable company. So the UAE has a renewables company. Fine. But he also heads the state-owned Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. So he heads the state-owned Abu Dhabi UAE National Oil Company. That's okay. So that's a conflict of interest, right? Right there, you think, God, this guy's the president. This is going to be a joke. This is going to be a clown act. I don't even have to pay attention. Hang on. So he was talking to some woman. Her name is Robinson, and she is. He was talking on November 21st, which is before the COP28. He was talking on November 21st at a panel event called "She Changes Climate." She, SHE. So this is, feminist, women-dominated, women's concerns about climate change. Fair enough. Why not? November 21, and his comments to this woman who heads She Changes Climate. She Changes Climate. I might have to comment on that right there. Okay, but I'm not going to do it right now. He's at this thing full of women, and he's this guy, and he represents, the UAE. I don't know. Do women even have rights in the UAE? I don't know. So here he is. He's talking to this woman, and she's giving him grief. She's giving him a ration of shit. Sounds to me like CNN only reported some of the things he said, but I'm imagining they are the most scandalous things anyone could say at a conference, a panel event like this. And he said them, and they pulled them out, and they quote mined them, and they're publishing him here, and he's the bad man. He went to this conference of the She Changes Climate. Really? She does? Okay, maybe more on that later. She changes climate, and he said these scandalous things. And apparently this Mary Robinson pushed him on it. She pushed him. Now, we don't know what her questions were. This is kind of one-sided journalism, right? But that's okay. It's CNN. What do you expect? One-sided journalism. We don't know what her questions were. We don't know when this got hot. We don't know when he started to push back. Okay, but we get his pushback. That's all I'm interested in. I can actually infer the rest. I'm interested in what he said. Al Jaber told Robinson, November 21st, there is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is what's going to achieve 1.5. Now, here I have to do it. I have to put 1.5 in context. That is 1.5 degrees C above baseline temperatures for the planet Earth. And you pick your baseline, 1850, 1950, year 2000. Okay. The planet has been getting hotter for a long time. All right. 100 years or so. This was predicted 150 years ago, and it has been observed. And it became a big deal in the 50s and 60s. The oil companies sat on the science that they did themselves because they wanted to know. Fair enough. They should know what their vulnerabilities are. They sat on the science. The broader scientific community got onto this. I was exposed to it during my master's degree, and we didn't quite know what to make of global heating, and that's how we discussed it. We didn't discuss it as climate change. Climate change, in air quotes, was a term invented by the Chamber of Commerce on how to talk about this. They want us to talk about climate change, but what it really is, and how I learned it, looking at the science, is it's global heating. Some people like to call it global warming, but warming, heating, it's kind of pick your poison, I guess. But it's not climate change. Yeah, that will happen too. But that's not how you discuss it. We do not discuss climate change. There are some climate scientists who might want to talk about climate change, but in terms of the physics of the thing, not the results of it, but the causation of the thing, the root cause analysis of the problem is global heating caused by excesses of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere caused by human consumption of fossil fuels. That's the physics and the science of it. Climate change is an outcome. You want to talk about that, that's fine. You can do projections, models, whatever you want to do. But the science of the thing is as I have just described it. That's how I learned it. That's how I learned it. Global heating, greenhouse gases, CO2, fossil fuels. That was it. That was the discussion. Nothing else. We didn't discuss anything else. He's saying, I'll repeat it now. There is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is what's going to achieve 1.5. That's one of the goals. 1.5 C above baseline is one of the goals, the least likely goal, an aspirational goal that came out of the Paris Climate Accords, that we should, as a species, do everything we can to keep the world, global heating, the world from heating by more than 1.5 degrees C relative to a baseline. And the baseline is a problem. People keep moving it forward. I mean, as the world gets hotter, if your baseline doesn't move, then the world will get hotter. But one way to avoid the world getting hotter is, if you can't stop the heating, then one way to avoid the appearance of the world getting hotter is you move the baseline. The world gets hotter, but you move the baseline up. And the world gets hotter, and you move the baseline up. And that's one way to avoid global heating. Well, you're not avoiding anything. It's just semantics, right? It's just narrative warfare. Well, that's what they do. That's what they do. Narrative warfare. That's what they do. Who's they? The 70,000 lobbyists currently at COP28. That's what they do. Narrative warfare. Why not? That's their job. So he's saying there is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve the 1.5 C Paris climate goal. He's right. That statement is a true statement. And he said There is no science. That's right. There isn't. Basically, it's not possible. Now, the 1.5 degrees C above baseline goal was always aspirational. In fact, it was even phrased that way. An aspirational goal of not exceeding 1.5 degrees C above baseline. And the reason it was aspirational is because the scientists in the room who were wording the goals of the Paris Climate Accords, they were saying, we will not stand by and let you tell people that 1.5 degrees C is a realistic goal, because it's not. Now, you can have an aspiration to that, just like you can have an aspiration to lose 20 pounds this year. Will you? I don't know. It might be physically impossible for you to do that. As a New Year's resolution, January 1st, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year. Yeah, that's an aspiration. Lots of people have that as an aspiration. No one's going to hold a gun to your head while you're trying to lose 20 pounds over the following year, 2024, right? It's just a goal. It's just a goal. Nice to have goals. Let's see if we can hit our goals. Are we going to hit this goal? Well, if you don't have goals, you have nothing to strive for. The 1.5 degrees C goal is aspirational. Now, the IPCC report, the last report, went on to say, and our drop dead goal, we better not miss this one, is 2.0, which is a long way from 1.5. Sounds like it's not, but that's a huge leap. In fact, people have thought for a while that the planet would not in any substantial way cross the 1.5 degree C threshold for decades, and probably wouldn't pass 2.0 for 50 years. And they were wrong. They had really no basis for saying things like that, because there's other people that could say, 1.5, yeah, we're not too far from there. We've already passed 1.0. That took a hot minute, and now we're at 1.3 or 1.4, depending on who you talk to, and 1.5 is like right there. 1.5 is on the grill, right? We're about to hit 1.5. It's not 50 years in the future. It's right there. You think you're going to avoid hitting 1.5 and going right through that and heading straight to 2? You're wrong. It's right there. In fact, this year, and you hand wave, whatever you want to say about this year, we crossed 1.5 this year. In fact, we've hit 2.0 a couple of times this year. Now, how do we know this? There are satellites in space that look at the Earth, and they take the temperature of the Earth from space, and they're taking the temperature of the land and the snow fields and the ice fields and the water and the oceans and the trees and the forests, and they're taking the temperature of all this stuff, and they come back and they say, well, here's your temperature. Love it or leave it. Okay? And so the eyes in the sky, the God's eye view of the planet Earth, says that we have crossed 2.0 twice this year. There you go. Fact. Deal with it. But it's temporary. And we've dropped down below 2.0 even today. Well, whatever. Crossed it. Deal with it. Not supposed to happen for 100 years. Well, there you go. Cross 2.0. Deal with it. And 1.5, we crossed like 6 months ago. And we're at or above 1.5 like most of this year. Deal with it. Just fucking deal with it. It's not 50 years out. It's not 100 years out. It's right now. Eyes in the sky, looking down, monitoring our progress on this matter, and we've crossed 1.5. That's some science for you, folks. I don't know how many times I've said on this channel, right here, in that front of that camera, 1.5 is in the rearview mirror. We are going through it. We are going to crash through 1.5 like a Batman movie, okay? We're going right through 1.5, and there's probably not a snowball's chance in hell of not going straight through 2.0. We are on greased skids heading right through these supposed aspirational goals of not exceeding heating the planet by more than this. It's already done. Basically, it's already done. Now, that context is important for two reasons. One, what he just said here. There is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is what's going to achieve 1.5. We are already through. We've gone through 1.5 today. This year is in the rearview mirror. Therefore, there cannot be, it is impossible, according to the laws of physics, according to the eye in the sky, it is now impossible to not exceed 1.5 because we did so. We did it. It's in the rearview mirror. There's no logical or scientific basis for saying we're not going to exceed 1.5. Now, you could opine, meaning this is your opinion, you could opine that we'll drop back down below 1.5 at some point. Okay, that's just your opinion. That's your opinion. I don't know why you said that. You're saying it. I'm saying you're not. Okay, I'm saying you probably will. You probably will drop below 1.5. But it's like everything else in the world. It's like you just had a heart attack. Now the doctor's going to tell you you're going to have another one. And you're saying, no, I just had one heart attack. The doctor's going to say one heart attack is the prelude for another one and another one and another one. And one of these is going to kill you. And when it kills you, you stop having heart attacks. That's how this works. That's what the cardiologist is going to tell you. Your first heart attack is the only warning you're going to get. We have crossed 1.5. That's the only warning you're going to get, baby. That's it. That's all you're going to get. We have been over 1.5 and the El Nino and the AMOC and something's going to change and the ice will come back and it'll cool down and it'll go below 1.5 and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe. It could do that. I might even agree with you, but that's just our opinion. That's our expectation. What if it doesn't? We have gone through 1.5 and Sultan Al Jaber says there is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is what's going to achieve us not going over the 1.5 aspirational goal. He's right. Yeah, because we did already. We already did it. So how could you have a scientific goal or a model outcome that says, oh yeah, if we do the following things, we won't cross 1.5? Been there, done that. Moving on with his statements. Al Jaber asked her, please help me. Show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels that will allow for sustainable socioeconomic development unless you want to take the world back into caves. Now, some people are going to say that's alarmist. He's threatening us with destruction if we phase out fossil fuels and he's so bad and we need to phase out fossil fuels and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to read it again. Please help me. Show me. This is a call to action. If it's possible, do it. Do it, bitch. If it's possible, it should be there. You should have your finger on it. You're arguing with me. You got your finger on it. Show me. Show me. That's what he's saying. Please help me. Show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels that will allow for sustainable socioeconomic development unless you want to take the world back to caves. Sustainable socioeconomic development has been the excuse used by fossil fuel companies, governments, policymakers to take no action. And the economists will tell you, well, yes, we could cut back on fossil fuels, except for jobs. We could cut back on fossil fuel consumption, except for economic growth. We could cut back on fossil fuel consumption, except for the children. Now, I've said many times on this channel, I'll say it again. You are 100% reliant on fossil fuels for everything you do, think, say, eat, every thought you have. Everything you're allowed to think about, you're allowed to value, you're allowed to do, you're allowed to say. Every single thing, every neuron that fires in your skull for any purpose and any output is dependent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on fossil fuels. You know this, you know it, and you know I'm right. And you can't imagine a world where you can continue to have thoughts without fossil fuels. You can't imagine a world where you can drive and fly and Amazon Prime without fossil fuels. And you'd be right. You'd be right, my dear. You would be right. That doesn't matter. You can't have fossil fuels. We are destroying the planet. We are now at 2.0 above baseline. Maybe it's only for a week. Maybe it's only for a month. Maybe it's not. We have screwed the pooch. We are off the edge of the map. I am seeing things coming through on data. I am seeing charts. I am seeing journals. I'm seeing discussions that will absolutely turn your hair gray. It's coming. It's here. It's not letting us go. It's taking us by the throat and dragging us wherever we have to go because we're not giving up on fossil fuels. Let me read it again. Please help me. Show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels that will allow for, I'll put it in air quotes, sustainable socio-economic development, unless you want to take the world back into caves. I think he was frustrated at this point because taking the world back into caves is clearly not sustainable socio-economic development. Now, in my last video, I pointed out you can have your sustainable socio-economic development. You can have that. You can have your fossil fuels. You can have your Starbucks drive-through if you want. You can have your second home in Tahoe. You can have your 3 trips to Disneyland. You can have that. And you can have for yourself sustainable socio-economic development. But not for everyone. Not for 2,000. Not for 8,000 million humans. You can't. You can have that. Anyone who can hear the sound of my voice can probably have that. And all the people who cannot hear the sound of my voice probably cannot have any of that. In fact, the people who cannot hear the sound of my voice are probably going to be lucky if they end up living in caves. Oh, and by the way, as I said in my last video, you also, if you are lucky, might end up living underground, which is not too far from living in caves because of how hot the earth is going to get. It's coming for us. It's got us by the throat. It's dragging us into that future. We are going there. We don't know where we're going, but I'm telling you, we're going there. We are going there. And the lucky ones will be living in caves because there aren't that many caves, folks. And maybe you can't find a cave. Maybe you just dig underground and make your own cave and you live underground. That works too. Why? Because the surface of the earth is uninhabitable. 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 Too hot. Yeah, I'm a little hot about this. Please help me. Show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels that will allow for sustainable socio-economic development, unless you want to take the world back into caves. The world. Not the elites, not me, not you, the rest of the world. Back into caves. Hunter-gatherers. Why are they hunter-gatherers? Because their food, what they depended on every single day, 24 hours a day, was 24 hours a day dependent on fossil fuels. Go back and watch my last video. What's it going to take? You're going to have to create village life. You're going to have hyper-local agriculture. You're going to have to grow food in your backyard. And then you're going to have to grow food collectively nearby because it can't be shipped to you in an 18-wheeler. You're going to have to grow your food nearby. And if we're not careful, you're going to be growing your food nearby in an air-conditioned greenhouse, or you'll be wearing a spacesuit to walk on the surface of the earth because it's too damned hot. All right? Did you get all that? Please help me. He's being nice about this. I wouldn't be nice about it. I'd back this journalist up. I don't know what Kool-Aid you've been drinking, but you got to explain this to me. I'm sitting here representing science. You're not. Explain to me how you're coming up with this. I'm not interested in journalism. I'm not interested in narrative warfare. I'm interested in the science. Please help me. Show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels that will allow for sustainable socio-economic growth, development, unless you want to take the world back into caves. Okay, fine. That's a legitimate question. Please show me. You're saying it's possible. Show me. I'm not stupid. Show me. You got your finger on it? It's right there. You just read the paper. It's right. Show me. Share it with me. I want to see it. Show me where this is possible. Show me the roadmap. Show me the project. We're not doing any projects. We're not talking about projects. We're not talking about technology. Show me. Show me where it is. I don't think you can, because I don't think it exists. I don't see it. In fact, frankly, as an engineer and a physicist, I don't think it can be done. Physics wins this one. Al Jaber reports Monday, I have always been very clear on the fact that we are making sure that everything we do is centered around the science. Well, I don't know that it is. That's what he's claiming. He's claiming that. I'm telling you, everything I say here is centered around the science. He just said the same thing. I can do it. I suppose he could do it. Is he true to that? I don't know. Maybe he's got advisors that are giving him bad science. I don't know. But people can make a definitive positive statement that they are going to be data driven. People can say that. I am data driven. I'm data driven. I'm looking at the charts. I'm looking at the data, peer reviewed stuff. It's driving me crazy. I don't know how people can ignore this. I have always been very clear on the fact that we are making sure that everything we do is centered around the science. Fine. Good on you. Good on you. He said that. He said that. And he could prove that. It would be easy to prove. Very easy to prove. He could just bring out his reading list. Here's the journals I read. Here's the articles I've read. Here's the things I've commented on. Here's the quotes we pulled from these. Here's the charts we published internally. Here's the analysis we did of the data. Here's our discussions about this. It's all in the papers. It's all peer reviewed. It's all in the list. Read it yourself. He could do that. So he's going to make this claim. He's centered around the science. He could prove that. He could prove that. It's not his opinion. I'm doing the same thing. Now, I have some opinions about what's going to happen to us if we don't do things. But my urgency is based on the science. The science. There are things out there happening on this planet right now. As I'm sitting here, there are things happening. They're terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Going to kill most of the people on this earth. Going to kill them. I don't like it. This guy is also claiming that he's centered on the science. I honestly think there is some confusion out there and misrepresentation, he said, adding, I have said over and over that the phase down and the phase out of fossil fuels is inevitable. Okay, let's take him at his word. He says he said it. There's probably publications you could find where he says that. Let's just assume that's true. He said that. In fact, the phase down, the phase out, is essential. It needs to be orderly, fair, just, and responsible. Fine. I have no argument. I have no argument with any of this. I know he's president of the UAE's Chamber of Commerce, and he's a sultan, and he's an elitist, and he's doing all these things. And you think, well, he can't have any credibility. I don't know. Why not? Now, I have a theory. I was trying to explain this to my wife this morning. I don't think I can explain it. I don't think I have the intellectual throw to explain this. Some of it's a hunch. Some of it is my understanding of human nature. Some of it is history. I have strung together enough information that I think I understand what's going to happen. And I think he's giving us a warning. I think he's saying it right here. This is narrative warfare. He's being very careful. I wouldn't be nearly this careful. I would just come out and say it. I would just tell people, yeah, you're done. You're done. No, I don't have to deal with you being done. You're done. Physics tells me you're done. And, I can't help you with that. You're just going to have to deal with it. So he's saying it's done. All right, fair enough. My wife and I have this discussion fairly frequently. And her perspective, which is fine, is that we, all of us, need to stop driving and flying and burning fossil fuels so we can save the planet. All right, that's one way to look at it. I understand the problem as a top-down problem, that civilization is dependent on fossil fuel consumption 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and that this consumption must grow and increase because all economic activity and certainly economic growth is tied to fossil fuel consumption. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Lots of people think that. Lots of people who are, economists and physicists will tell you, oh yeah, the energy we're getting out of fossil fuels is the energy that drives everything. Used to be, as I pointed out and discussed in my last video, we did everything by the power of the sun. And the sun rose in the morning and set in the evening, and that's all you got, right? And it was the sun's traversal across the sky, so-called appearing to do so, that brought the rains and brought the winds and the weather and made the grass grow and made the crops grow and made the forests grow and put on the nuts on the trees and the fruits on the vines and we fed the animals and we fed ourselves, and it was all because of the sun every day up in the sky. And places that didn't have much sunlight, like the far north or the far south, they had to live some other way. You go look at these people's diets, they ate meat and they ate fat and they survived on that. And they did okay, I guess, because there they are to this day. And everybody else that had enough sunlight to do this, raised crops, grain, barley, wheat, corn, rice, depending where you are, and your habitat. And we would put our animals on pasture, and the animals would get strong, and then we would use the animal. Its strength comes from the sun because it came from the pasture to pull a plow, and we would till our fields, and we would use wood and later coal to smelt metals, and we could make metals. We could make saws and axes and hammers and chisels, and we could shape our world using sunlight. Coal is not sunlight, but yeah, that's how we did it. We burned a lot of trees, of course, to do this, making a lot of charcoal to smelt iron and other alloys like bronze, cooking, heating, light. The sun's daily input. And at that time, we were 250 million people, not 8,000 million like we are now. 8,000 million people. That's a lot of people. 8,000 million. If I had 8,000 subscribers, I'd be stoked. That's big. That's a big number. If I had $8,000, I'd be thrilled. That's a big number. We only were able to achieve 8,000 million versus 250 million, what we started out as, by using fossil fuels. And that has to stop. And like I tell my wife, I don't know how it stops, but on that faithful day, on the day when it stops, however it stops, it's an accident, it's on purpose, it's a meteor, it's a war, it's a nuclear exchange, whatever it is, on the day when the fossil fuels stop, you will see no driving, flying, movement of goods, movement of money, or jobs. And these are all the sacred things. These are all this is all global industrialized civilization. This is all the sacred goals. What they call it? Sustainable socio-economic development. What does that translate to? Sustainable, socio-economic development. What does that translate to? That's everybody on earth. Poor, rich, north, south, black, brown, everybody. Driving, flying, moving goods, having money, having a job. Okay, that's what socioeconomic development means. That's what he's talking about here. It is 100% dependent on fossil fuels. And if you are going to, because you must, phase down or phase out, this is new terminology that the 70,000 lobbyists have taught us to adopt. Phase down, phase out, whatever that means. I mean, really, it means nothing. Actually, it means who's going to do it? What's the treaty? What's the rate? What's the destination? What are we trying to achieve? The phase down, phase out of fossil fuels will implode the whole thing. It'll just implode it. And you won't have everyone driving and flying and moving goods and shipping and manufacturing and Disneyland and Starbucks. There won't be everyone doing those things, which is, of course, the goal of capitalism, everyone doing these things, all the capitalists raking in the dough. You won't have everyone doing these things in the absence of fossil fuels. You won't have anyone doing these things. Nobody will be doing these things. Day after, at most, 3 days after they turn off the fossil fuels, then you get zero. No driving, no flying, no movement of goods, no movement of money except out of the country, and no jobs. Zero. Big zero. On the day they stop delivering and burning fossil fuels, the number is zero. None of those things. He's basically saying that here. Please help me. Show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuels that will allow for, quote, sustainable socioeconomic development, end quote, unless you want to take the world back into caves. Yes, if we phase out and phase down with the goal of zero fossil fuel consumption, we will have the same thing said by different words. We will have no driving, flying, movement of goods, movement of money or jobs. You won't have them. You won't have them for everyone. Now, my last video was about what happens in the phase out of fossil fuels. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right now. And I'm not going to mince words. Nearly everybody dies. I said the thing. I said the quiet part out loud. We are eight, I keep saying two, I don't know why. We are 8,000 million people sustained almost entirely on fossil fuel consumption. You would have to be an undiscovered tribe in the Amazon not to be part of this shit show. And if you live in Europe, any part of Asia, North America, South America, if you are not a undiscovered tribe living in Amazonia, then you are 100% dependent on constant, continuous, daily infusions of fossil fuels, natural gas, coal, and oil for your existence, for everything you have, everything you eat, everything you drink, every thought you have, everything you say, everyone you know, everyone you meet, everywhere you go, everything you do. 100% dependent on fossil fuels, every single step, every single breath. And without that, you can't sustain 8,000 million people. And the last time we lived on fossil fuels, or without fossil fuels, the last time we lived on the sole power of the sun for pasture, domesticated animals, crops, trees, fruits. The last time we were solely dependent on that, and we lived sustainably within the world because there was no other way to exist except to consume the fruits of the earth. Sound like a hippie, aren't I? The last time we did that was probably the Middle Ages in Europe, the Middle Ages, probably. And we were already cutting down entire forests to make lumber, to build sailing ships, to raid the rest of the world for plunder. We're already doing that. So you may have to go back even further. And if you go back that far, you find 200, 250 million people. It's a lot of people, right? That's not even the population of the US. 250 million people. And if we were to drop our reliance on fossil fuels, phase it out, phase it down anyway, turn it off, somehow, somewhen, which we absolutely have to do. We must do that. If we do that, there will be no sustainable socio-economic development. And I don't care if that hurts your tender feelings. That is a fact. Well, we could have alternative energy. Show me. Show me. Well, it just has to scale up. The entire aircraft industry runs on kerosene, a byproduct of oil production. Show me how you're going to do that. Long haul trucking, transporting food and iPhones thousands of miles across the country is 100% reliant on diesel fuel. Well, we could change that. Show me. Show me. You're saying these things. Bitch, show me. I want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want you bloviating about it. I think it's impossible. I think it's outside the laws of physics. I think you're trapped. I think you're going to die. Show me that I'm wrong. Show me. And I think Sultan Al Jaber is saying, you're done. I think he's saying we're done. I think he's saying they're going to turn it off. He's warning us. There is no science, no scenario out there to phase out fossil fuel and achieve our 1.5 degree baseline goal. There's no way to do it. And if there's no way to do it for 1.5, is there a way to do it with 2.0? Show me. I want to see it. I want to see the roadmap. I want to see the pathway. I want to see the physics. I want to see the engineering. I want to see where the money's coming from and who's going to build and who's not going to build and who's going to get pushed off the island. Show me. You say it can be done? Prove it. Because all the indications are they can't. We haven't decreased fossil fuel consumption one iota. In fact, we've increased fossil fuel consumption over the entire period when we promised we were going to reduce it. That's your facts. And you're telling me now that you're going to phase out fossil fuels and you're going to hit your 1.5 degree C goal when we've already exceeding 2.0 twice? You're saying that's what we're going to do? Prove it. Because all the proof, all the data, and all the science that will come out of that data, all the papers that will ever be written from this day forward are going to report that we went over 1.5 and we went over 2.0 this year. Because that's a fact. That's a fact. You can deny it. It's a fact. We did it. We did it. Eye in the sky. Satellite telemetry. Science. Data. We did it. We went over. We might drop down. Doesn't matter. You've had your first heart attack. Now you're in heart attack territory. Good luck with that. Be in denial all you want to. You're now officially in heart attack territory. Yeah, that's us. We went over 1.5. Oh, then we promptly, 6 months later, went over 2.0. That's ghastly. This was supposed to happen for 100 years. You can still read editorials about how, yeah, well, we have this goal not exceeding 2.0, but we have 100 years to figure that out. No, you don't. No, baby. You've already exceeded it. Well, but we'll drop back down again. Yeah, that's your opinion. We'll see, won't we? We'll find out how much you drop down below it. If you drop down below it at all. Yeah, you probably will. I can see the point. You probably will, but I don't know for a fact you won't. When do we cross 2.0 or 1.5 forever and never drop below that? Next week. That's the answer now, next week, because we've already done it. So we could permanently cross 1.5 next week. There is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is what's going to achieve 1.5. You're not going to achieve 1.5. And I guess in 6 months or a year, we'll be having the same discussion about 2.0. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's no science. No papers have been written on how to do this. Now, there are economic analyses and there are, 70,000 lobbyists who will say this, and there are 70,000 lobbyist scientists who will put their name on a paper, and they got paid by ExxonMobil, and they'll publish a paper in some obscure journal, and they'll say that 1.5 is achievable, as well as all this economic growth and everything, and every child gets a pony. They'll put their name on that, and they'll publish that in an obscure journal, and that's going to be your science. Well, I guess fine. If that's the game we're going to play, go ahead. I guess fine. James Hansen, no doubt one of the leading voices in this entire shit show, is publishing papers that say 10 degrees C is now inevitable, and 10 degrees C is uninhabitable Earth. You can't even be on the surface of the Earth. He says, oh, he has paleo data. Data. He has paleo data that says, yeah. At this point, we're probably going straight to 10.0 degrees C above baseline. Data. Peer-reviewed journal. Peer-reviewed article in a peer-reviewed journal. Now, people don't like it. They're giving him a ration of shit over it. Data, baby. Deal with it. You don't like it? Go stick your head up your ass. It's fine. Data. We're going straight to 10. There's a scenario for it. It's in the paleo data, paleo climate data. It's out there. It's floating around. It's been out there forever. People have known this. They just didn't dare look at it. They didn't want to look at it. Why do they not want to look at it? Because if you try and publish something like that, you're going to get blown out of the water. Why? Because no one wants to hear it. Nobody wants to hear it. I'm saying it. And I'm saying that the Sultan isn't wrong. He's not wrong. Now, maybe his whole life is wrong. Maybe he said other things that are terrible and misogynistic and misanthropic or whatever else, but he's not wrong on this. There is no science out there or no scenario out there that says the phase out of fossil fuels is going to achieve our aspirational goal of 1.5 degrees C above baseline. And James Hansen did publish a paper based on data that says we are headed for 10.0. The same thing, different words. And at 10 degrees C above baseline, the surface of this planet is uninhabitable. Uninhabitable. And that makes this following statement that much more poignant. Unless you want to take the world back into caves. 8,000 million people aren't going to make it through this. 8,000 million people are not going to make it. They're not going to make it. I was doing some number work in my last video. What's a scenario? What's a realistic scenario? Something that places us below 250 million, because that's the last time we lived on solar power alone. Now, these days we'll have solar cells and we'll have wind turbines. And are those sustainable without fossil fuels? No, not really. Probably not. Maybe, but maybe for a few elites. And how many people is that? What was I saying? Like 5 nines die off. 99.999% of the human population has to die off before we get to a number that's sustainable. Sustainable socioeconomic development. And the rest of you are living in literal caves. Actual caves, if you can find them. Or if you want to dig a cave in the side of a mountain. Or if you can find a tunnel. That's where the temperature will be, sustainable for you, for human survival. And you'll have to break out of your cave or break out of your tunnel and go find some food, and you go rushing back because the surface is uninhabitable, and eventually you trip and you fall and you end up, on the ground for a while, and by the time you get up, you're cooked, and then you've exceeded your biological capacity for enduring heat, and you die. And that's life in a cave. That's life living in caves. For everybody except, the global elites, which will have their air-conditioned homes and their air-conditioned greenhouses for food production. Oh, and by the way, being stuck in your home, being stuck in your basement, being stuck in a greenhouse, being stuck in your car, being stuck in a parking garage, that's also living in a cave. That's living in a cave because the world is uninhabitable on the surface. Everybody will be living in caves. It's just that some of us will have really nice caves, and some of us, our caves will suck. Some of us, our caves will be, Frank Lloyd Wright inspired mansions with air conditioning in every room, and a car with air conditioning, and a garage with air conditioning, and a job site with air conditioning, and an underground structure with air conditioning, and a Costco with air conditioning, and who knows. And some of us will live in caves, actual literal caves, dug into a mountainside without air conditioning. Because we didn't stop burning fossil fuels at a time when it would have possibly made a difference. So, Sultan Al Jaber, I don't know the guy from Adam, but he's not wrong. He's not wrong. And he ran up against a journalist or someone who had an axe to grind, and he started talking science, and he got his head handed to him. Except he pushed back. He said, "No, you can't do this to me. I'm being science driven, and there are scientists out there that are just as angry and terrified of this scenario as I am. And yeah, sure, I represent a country with oil production, but then so do you if you came from the UK, or so do you if you come from the US. We're all in this together. We're all dependent on fossil fuels. Are we going to save ourselves? Are we going to save anybody? Are we going to even do this? What are we doing? When are we going to do this? When are we going to engage in the act of saving some people? When are we going to get off the Titanic, get into the lifeboats, and sail into an uncertain future? When are we going to do that?" God damn. That is the challenge. He's not wrong. He isn't wrong. And I was calling him Evil Al, to distinguishing him from Al Gore. But and maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe he beats his wife. I don't know. Maybe he has 6 wives. Not that that's evil, but I believe if this Al Jaber got together in a room with Al Gore, they would have a lot to talk about. And there's plenty of people think Al Gore is misled and evil, and that he's trying to destroy democracy or take people's guns away or whatever they think he's doing. Um, Al Gore isn't wrong. He pulled his punches a lot. Of course he did. Of course he did. He didn't want to be, blackballed. And Al Jaber, Sultan Al Jaber, I don't see him pulling his punches at all. 30 years 30 years down the road, most of his entire life, 30 years down the road from Al Gore, we're still fighting these battles and losing. And he's saying, show me. Please help me. Show me a roadmap. Show me. You think this is possible? It's on you. You show me. Show me. And if you can't show me, then just we're going to look at the science. We just got to look at the physics of this and the engineering and the costs and how far away we are from doing anything at all. If you can't show me the way out of this, and I want to see it, I want to see it. I want a peer-reviewed article. I want to see the math. I want to see the financing. And I want to know how you're going to get everybody to sign on to this. Show me. It's on you. You make this real. You make me believe, because I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I have seen the light. And I think Sultan Al Jaber has seen the light. He's one of the elites. He doesn't think we're going to do it. Show me, please. Help me. Show me a way. He's in a position to turn it off. Go back and watch my prior video about what happens when they turn it off. I don't know who does it. I don't know how they do it. I think he's saying it. He's saying the thing. You better show me. You better show me how. Because he can turn it off. Will he? He needs to avoid an uninhabitable earth. That's his job. He's got all the money. He's got all the influence. He's got all the politics. He's got everything he needs. He doesn't need any more of this, any of this. He doesn't need you to be able to go to Starbucks and get a latte in your car at the drive-thru. He doesn't need that. He needs an inhabitable planet. That's what he's worried about. Because where are the Saudis and the Emirati? Where are they going to go? Do you think they'll be welcomed in Germany or Kansas? Not likely. Yeah, he can turn it off. The assignment is to the journalists and the head of the She's Fighting Climate Change or whatever it was called. Show me. Prove to me that you can do this. Prove to me that you won't go over 1.5 above baseline. Prove to me you won't go above 2.0. Prove to me that James Hansen is wrong, that we hit 2.0 on greased skids. We're going straight to 10. Show it to me. Because he's got his finger on the switch. And you better convince him that there's a way to do this shit show and keep your fossil fuels and keep your sustainable socio-economic development. Or he's going to turn it off. He's representing the science. And anybody who's representing the science and representing the data at this point, you better start paying attention. You better start paying attention to the details of what they're saying. And he's saying, please help me. Help me. Show me a roadmap. Show me a way out of this that includes all of your sacred, sustainable socioeconomic development. Show me. Please help me. He doesn't have to beg. I don't have to beg. We don't have to beg for anything. It's on you. You show me. Tell me how this is going to work. Because everything I'm seeing is it's not. It's not going to work. You saying it will? You saying that we're obligated? Do we have to do it for the children? 8,000 million people are at stake. 8,000 million. 8,000 is a big number. A million is a big number. 8,000 million is a big fucking number. And you think you can figure this out and keep your fossil fuels and not phase them out and not phase them down, and you can have your socio-economic development and float all the boats and everyone gets a Tesla and every child gets a pony? You think so? That's what you're selling? Please help me. Show me a roadmap. Because I, Sultan Al Jaber, can shut it off. I think that's what he's talking about. I think that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the possibility, the likelihood of just having to shut it off. COP28. Going around and around and around and around and around and around. It's got to stop. Sultan Al Jaber is telling you it's got to stop. I'm telling you, it's got to stop. And because it's got to stop, it is going to stop. Get yourself to a cave. Get yourself to a lifeboat. Get where you need to be with who you need to be with. I think we are being warned. Please help me. Show me a roadmap. Show me any other way. He's pleading with us. I'm not pleading with you. I'm telling you to go to hell. You had a chance, you didn't do it. He's asking you to do it. He's asking you to show him a way where we can meet our aspirational goals. We can have our sustainable socio-economic development, and we can phase down fossil fuels and save our skin, meaning his skin. We can save our skin. Figure it out, people. Figure it out. Now they're going to turn it off. They're telling us we're fucking up. We're not figuring it out. I'm telling you, you're not figuring it out. You're not figuring it out fast enough. You're not even trying. You're not even putting in a good faith effort. Figure it out now. Right now. They're going to turn it off. That's the only one you're going to get out of me. Do it now. I'm going to do a video on hope. I was going to do it before this one, but I had to apologize to Sultan Al Jaber. Sir, I was wrong. Sir, good luck.